people have this impoverished conception of freedom. That's just do whatever you want.
Yeah, well, what about responsibility, right?
Bob Dylan said a hero is someone who understands the responsibility that comes with his freedom.
If you want to be free, you also have to be a decent human being.
A policy taken in the early days of the internet of let the market sort it out.
There's a wonderful clip from Hayek where he says it would be very important for humankind to invent this new money separated from the state.
How do we break out of this loop? Is Bitcoin the only hope for us?
This fiat thing, a direct consequence of Keynesian economics, has to be put to death. Spike the vampire and silver bullet through the heart. The only way is to have a better option.
Ricardo, so nice to meet you.
Well, welcome to Puebla. I hope you enjoy your stay here in the Festival of Ideas.
Yeah, it's a very beautiful country. Got to see a nice vista of it on my drive in today. And then the festival here, the conference is amazing.
Yeah.
So, I just came in from Bitcoin 2025 and your stage really outperforms there. So they've got some catching up to do.
Yeah, but they got high energy there at Bitcoin 2025.
Yeah, there was a lot of energy, about 30,000 people,
Yeah.
and a lot of announcements. So
A great event, yeah.
things are good when Bitcoin's in a bull market, that's for sure. Could you tell me a little bit about this event? Because you mentioned you guys have been doing this for 15 years. How did this get started?
Well, I used to go, a long time ago, I used to go to the World Economic Forum in Davos until I got so disappointed about that. And then I switched over to TED, and I was at TED for a while. And I said, I could do my own TED. So this is how we started. And I have to say, it's very satisfactory to see the quality of the speakers that shows up. And every year, we have a very good take-home value. Yeah. I'm very satisfied.
And there's a lot of different thinkers here, different authors, people from different walks of life, different fields. What is the theme? I mean, you're just trying to bring a diversity of ideas together?
No. We're a big promoter of freedom. We're libertarians. So we believe that freedom, that saying, the truth shall make you free.
Yes.
So I think it's unfortunate that the CIA uses that slogan, but
I didn't know that.
yes, actually it comes from the scriptures.
Yeah.
But getting educated about what's going on in the world, about technology, about innovation, about health, philosophy, politics, economics, arts. Getting educated is important so you can have an opinion or a stance that's worthy and defendable. And that's what we try to do. We encourage people to get educated and to think and to be free.
It's beautiful. Beautiful mission.
Yeah.
One of the main things I try to teach people on the show is along those lines, that the human superpower is that we're highly programmable.
Yes.
And if we don't take that superpower seriously and seek out conditions to program ourselves in the right way, to be a critical thinker, to support others, to carry on the legacy that we've inherited.
Yeah.
We've made so much progress as a species that we're much more likely to be programmed by others.
Yeah. Well, if you want to be free, you also have to be a decent human being. So having the right moral values aboard is an important point. And this is something I just recently started thinking about, because I'm not a religious person, but you have to hand it over to the Christians, because Jesus Christ comes here 2,000 years ago and says, you will not kill, you will not steal, you will not fornicate, you will respect your parents, you will love God, meaning the ideal. And those are pretty sound moral bases, and that have resulted in very good progress for humanity, right? So not stealing and not murdering is a pretty good principle.
Yes.
And then you can be free. You can be responsible for your own actions. So freedom and responsibility need to go hand in hand.
Yes.
You got to be accountable for your actions. But it's better if you have a good moral foundation and then get free, right?
Yes.
And that's why children are not free.
Yeah.
They're under the tutelage and control of their parents,
Yes.
right? Unfortunately, modern society wants us adults to be under the tutelage and control of the big government,
Right.
which is, the bad end of the stick, or the sharp end of the bayonet, or the sole of the boot.
Right.
Yeah, state is organized violence. So why would we delegate that kind of power to the state? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, agreed. Have you always been a libertarian in your thinking? Is this something that you grew into? Like, what has been your pathway towards libertarianism as a philosophy?
Well, I studied economics, and I went into the Austrian branch, and when it was not popular at all. So that got me actually kicked out of economic school because they were all Keynesians. And my father and my grandfather were both gold bugs in the 70s. So after Nixon defaulted on the US dollar in 71, it became very obvious to my father and my grandfather that fiat money was really a fraud, right? So I grew up in that thinking, and which is very antagonical to the state.
Yeah.
And then I got involved with Ayn Rand, and the Atlas Shrugged and the Fountainhead. And I saw the devastating consequences of the communist revolution in Cuba, and then later in Nicaragua. So it was pretty clear for me that the bigger the state, the worse the situation for people. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I've always been on that side. And then recently, I have sort of picked up on the libertarian thinking of Murray Rothbard and Hans Hermann Hoppe and so forth.
Yeah.
Because they developed those ideas more, and it's very interesting. I think that the smaller the state, the better. We should have much more decentralized power. Big states commit horrendous crimes.
Yeah.
The bigger the state, the bigger the crime.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a anti-state.
Oh, we see eye to eye on that, certainly. I assume then you are a proponent of deep decentralization, right? This idea, we use the word freedom a lot, and I think a lot of people have this impoverished conception of freedom. That's just do whatever you want.
Yeah, what about responsibility, right?
Exactly. I was going to say, I think Bob Dylan said a hero is someone who understands the responsibility that comes with his freedom.
Exactly.
That we do need this rational self-restraint.
Yeah.
The example I commonly cite is the rules of the road, right? We all agree to drive on the right or the left side of the road, or depending on where you're at. But by agreeing to self-restrain in that way, we actually increase all of our freedom, right? Traffic flows more smoothly. We don't have the entropy of car accidents all the time, everywhere. And private property seems to be something very similar, where if we can just agree to honor the just appropriation of assets and not steal from one another, then we can unlock significant economic abundance.
Our friend Matt was upstairs a minute ago. He made a cool presentation yesterday and said, this is just like your mother said. Don't take your brother's things and don't do harm.
Yeah.
That's it. It's very simple. Don't harm somebody else.
Yeah.
And don't take their stuff.
Yes.
That's pretty easy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but of course, these collectivist thought leaders and intellectuals don't hesitate to propose wholesale property confiscation because of their grandiose ideas.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a great point. And it seems to me like this is a very pernicious problem because it is very simple. Like you were able to sum it up in very few words, but the acquisitiveness or the self-seeking of the human heart, we seem to be opportunistic creatures.
Well, listen, human beings don't have anything unless they do one of two things. Either they work hard and produce something, or they steal something.
Take it, yeah.
And that's the two ways to get rich, right?
That's right. I always say this.
Bastiat said it very, very well in his books. Spoliation, despojo. I don't know what the word is. Spoliation.
Plunder. They call
Plunder.
it. Yeah,
Plunder.
English, yeah.
Plunder is much easier.
Yeah.
So war and plunder and theft is a much easier way to get rich than to actually sweat and produce, right?
Yeah, the problem is it's parasitic on production, right? That if everyone just follows that philosophy, then there's nothing to steal.
Exactly, and that takes us to Cuba today. This island of Cuba, which is a wonderful place, which is naturally rich in resources and fertile land, they're going through a starvation period, and they got no energy, they got no light, and it's a total mess because the state has grown to be such a parasite that nobody wants to work.
Yeah.
And anybody who had any hope for the future has left. Right. And leaving behind the very worst of society.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah, and this is where I think Bitcoin matters so much because we've clearly passed laws throughout history to try and restrict people from stealing from one another or killing one another. But that's always come at the cost of centralizing violence into the state. And then the question has always been, well, who's going to guard the guardians, right?
Yeah.
And then someone comes into power that can then bend the law or the rules to favor themselves and disfavor others. And so there's this saying that people don't follow laws, people follow incentives. And so the idea of Bitcoin being money that cannot be monopolized or corrupted in that way, and being a form of property that's very difficult to seize physically.
Yeah, yeah.
This seems like a fundamental reorientation of human incentives ultimately.
Absolutely, because you see, on the wrong side, on the left side, what do you have? You have the big state financed by fiat taxation and fiat theft, which is inflation, right? It's the inflation is a tax that nobody understands and nobody recognizes, and it's 100% responsibility of the state. This fiat creation enables the state to grow obese to an unprecedented size, and where anybody anywhere would be laughed out of the room if they propose that kind of deficit financing through money printing, right? So that's what we have on this side. And on this side, we have the complete opposite pole, which is strong money, hard money, which is Bitcoin, which empowers the individual, which allows the individual to be protected from the state theft right, via your self-custody wallet, and allows the individual to skip the country and go somewhere else if his assets are under threat. And of course, this is the way to go. But the guys in power don't like that. Huh? So I'm kind of surprised that in the States, Bitcoin has been promoted or accepted by the current administration. Maybe they're being short-sighted.
Well, it's very likely that they don't understand the implications of this innovation, right? And there was a policy taken in the early days of the internet of like, do not harm, basically let the market sort it out.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best case scenario we could hope for with Bitcoin. It seems like that's the direction it's going, at least for now.
There's a wonderful clip from Hayek where he says that it would be very important for humankind to invent this new money which was separated from the state by a sly roundabout way.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting prognosis, and this has come to pass.
Yeah.
This is really amazing what Satoshi Nakamoto has left us with.
It really is.
Yes.
And there's others too. Tesla had written about something like Bitcoin a long time ago. Henry Ford talked about an electricity currency that would end wars.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so
I'm not familiar with that.
there's been a lot of interesting prognostication about Bitcoin.
Yeah, before Bitcoin, I was very much into this digital gold, e-gold, e-money, something, and then it got all shut down. But then this thing came around, and suddenly, boom! Here we are. I bought my first Bitcoin at 400, which was way back then, 2013 or something.
Good for you. You got in there earlier than I did.
Well, that's
Smart man.
It was by mistake, huh?
Yeah.
It was at a conference.
Yeah.
That's how you learn stuff.
Yes. That's good. I want to ask, so one of the most pernicious problems, I think, about living under a central banking paradigm where we're printing money and people that are the savers that are being stolen from in this paradigm don't understand what's happening.
Yeah.
All right. So the prices are going up.
Yeah.
The government is blaming capitalists or blaming supply chains, or anyone other than the central bank is being blamed for the inflation. And the pernicious part is that the proceeds stolen through inflation are then used to fund propaganda, fake news,
And
war, and then also the pernicious part is this pseudo-scientific paradigm. We brought up Keynesian economics. Right, we have a nonsense academic paradigm in all mainstream universities that says effectively government is God. They can print as much money as they need to, and they suffer no opportunity costs. And so the weird thing is like the money printing is being used to steal, and then the proceeds from the theft is being used to condition the victims of the theft to believe that inflation is good for them.
Amazing.
How do we break out of this loop? Is Bitcoin the only hope for us?
Yeah. Listen, this fiat thing, which is a direct consequence of Keynesian economics, has to be put to death, like the Spike, the vampire with a silver bullet through the heart.
Yeah.
We really need to get rid of fiat. So the only way is to have a better option. And in that respect, that's why I'm so optimistic about Bitcoin, because more and more people will come to realize that the way to get insulated from inflation is through Bitcoin. Now, there's another thing, the governments, they're so tricky because they're the ones who measure inflation. Yeah.
Of course. Our company.
The CPI, oh yes, the CPI says 2.1, precisely, not 2.2, 2.1, not 2.0, 2.1. What the hell is this? And how did they come up with that number? Who feels 2.1? No, but then you turn around and you see that the car is $100,000, It used to be 20.
Yeah.
It's such a scam. I just don't believe it. It's hard to believe that the more people don't realize it, And then there's another, even we talk about the inflationary tax, which means how the prices of goods and services rise, because of the currency debasement.
Yeah.
But that does not take into account that in the past 40 years, we have had a huge technological deflation, which should have made us all much richer.
Yeah.
And prices should have been much lower in all respects.
Yeah.
All that technological deflation, instead of being in the people's pockets, is in the government's purchasing power.
Yeah.
So it's a double theft. This is more sophisticated, huh?
Yeah.
It's not just the inflation.
No.
It's all the deflation that the government took for their own benefit.
It's an excellent point. It's an excellent point. You get people hypnotized on this 2% number, and they never see the foregone price deflation that they would have enjoyed.
Listen, I've been selling TV sets forever in my stores, right? Well, 40 years ago, a 14-inch colored TV set with a manual selector, it used to cost about $400. Of those dollars, now you get this amazing 80-inch screen, which is much better quality, for $400 of today.
Yeah.
Imagine that difference. It's not been for the benefit of the customers.
Right. Right. That's a great example too, because electronics is that one area where we're still advancing rapidly enough that the price deflation of innovation is outpacing the monetary inflation.
But this is physical goods.
But we would see that everywhere else.
But what about, artificial intelligence? Today we saw an example of this short clip. It could be a commercial. It's maybe 2 or 3 minutes. But if you tried to film that commercial, we're from the media business. We tried to film that commercial 2 or 3 years ago. I mean, it would cost $500,000. There's a scenery here in the mountains, and then there's a lake, and inside the lake there's a submarine. Then you go in the submarine, and then there's these Russian guys arguing if they're going to launch World War III or not. I mean, it's a great production.
Yeah.
It could be a great ad, And the guy said it cost him $5,000, and he believes the next year we're going to cost $500,000.
Wow. So are you a subscriber then that these two things are fundamentally incompatible?
What?
Technology is driving prices down.
Yes. And it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Deflation is a good thing for everybody.
Of course.
When did we get sold that we need price stability? This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as price stability. Right. Prices are relative, and some are going up and some are going down, and that's the way it should be. Yeah. And all the technology should be going down rapidly.
Yes.
The price of technology should be going down rapidly.
Yeah. Yeah, the way I describe it is the price is an approximation of how much effort it takes to solve a problem. And so we want solutions to problems to become cheaper, better, faster, cheaper over time. That's the point of capitalism and trade. I'm not sure how we got indoctrinated into believing that we need prices to go up.
Stable prices.
Oh.
The mandate, or even worse, the Fed comes and says, our goal is to keep inflation at 2%. Yeah, we're goddamn thieves, that's a pretty steep wealth tax.
Yeah.
If they take 2% of your wealth every year, you do the compound, and it's going to be a disaster.
35 years, you're cut in half.
Yeah. So I saw the data the other day. Since the start of the euro currency, they've lost 99% of the value. And this is just since I think it was 94 or something.
Yeah, staggering. The Fed came to be in 1913, so we're now over 110 years into this iteration of the central banking experiment.
Yeah.
How much of this, are we going to have a massive intellectual economic hangover from this experience? Like, how long is it going to take for us to get back on track, assuming Bitcoin is successful and the central banking is sunsetted?
Somebody's going to cry. There's going to be a lot of crying.
Yeah.
And as usual, the most vulnerable and the weakest people will pay the hardest price.
Yeah.
So what am I saying? The people who are about to retire and think that they have earned their pension, they're not going to be happy at all.
Yeah.
It's going to be very hard. Because the first ones to be wiped out are the guys who are on fixed income.
That's right.
Yeah. So what we're going to see shortly is monetization of the debt. It'll be what they call liquefied is the term. Liquefied. Debt will be liquefied through inflation. And what that means is that people who have a fixed income will see their real income go to nothing.
Yeah.
And I've been there. We lived through that in the 80s in Mexico. I started working in 81. In 83, the country went broke, and our company went broke. So it was my job to turn it around. And in the past 40 years, we've been really successful turning that company around and making many other companies. But I never forgot that that experience. It was really something. Imagine that the price of the dollar for us went from 20 pesos per dollar, and 6 years later it was 3,000 to 1.
Jeez.
Yeah, 20 to 3,000. You never forget.
No. We often say that pain is information, right? It's that thing that puts you into
seared in your blood.
Yes. So you're absolutely correct. First of all, it's the poor, people living on fixed income, people living paycheck to paycheck. These are the people that suffer the most in these.
Let me say that paycheck to paycheck, they don't suffer so much, Robert, because they can always get a new job. Their salary will be revalued, okay? But their savings are going to be pulverized.
Yeah.
unless they have Bitcoin.
Right.
The ones that really are screwed are pensioners
Yeah.
with no cost of living adjustment,
Right.
Social Security recipients, which is basically that, and long-term bondholders, which you gotta be absolutely retarded to buy a 30-year bond. You know, I just don't understand, for the love of me. How could somebody think of lending money to the U.S. government at 30 years at a fixed rate?
Yeah.
It got to be the worst financial mistake ever.
Yeah. I remember learning about the quote unquote risk-free rate in college.
Risk-free.
That made my mind melt, because like, that isn't, how can you have a risk-free rate? But the argument that, oh, well, they can just print money to pay off the bond, so they're never going to default.
Oh, if you define risk like that.
Oh, exactly. But it's an optical illusion, right?
Yeah, of course.
Because they can have, as you said, it's a negative real yield. But as long as you have a positive nominal yield, then they call it risk-free.
Yeah.
So there's so many of these illusions. We use the metaphor orange pilling people. You know, we adopt this metaphor from the Matrix when Morpheus offers Neo the red pill or the blue pill. And Neo has the choice. He can either go back to sleep and stay in the illusion, or he can wake up and go further into the truth. Other than getting Bitcoin into people's hands so they can survive the financial victimization that is ongoing and probably going to accelerate, Bitcoin also unlocks your mind in a way, which is a very fascinating thing. People that study it, the veils of unreality start to be lifted.
Yes.
What is it? Why is it so important to orange pill people? And what is it about that experience that causes people to level up?
Well, like you said, in that movie, they don't realize they're inside the Matrix. And for most people, they have never been educated. And they don't realize that they're in this trap, in this rat race where they will never be free and they will be forever slaves to the big government. So some people are fine being slaves. They don't mind it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I would like to say that most of us don't like it. We like to be free in control of our own decisions. And the sooner we get illustrated by Bitcoin, the better. That's why I just wrote that book, The Bitcoin Enlightenment, with some co-authors. And it explains my deep distrust and how I despise fiat. And how I think fiat is the biggest fraud around, and that the only way to get out of that fraud is through Bitcoin.
Yeah.
It makes you responsible. You got to learn to custody your stuff.
Yeah.
You know, because that's another thing. Hey, my money is safe. It's in the bank. I'm a banker, I have a bank. I have 22 million customers.
Yeah.
And I know all about the risks. People think that they took the money to the bank, put it there, and that they're probably sitting in the vault in the backside of the bank. It's not like that. The money's gone. Yeah. It's invested in it's been loaned to somebody to buy a house.
Yeah.
That's what banks do,
That's exactly right. That's exactly.
So the banking system is also heavily reliant on the central bank as a lender of last resort. And, because we have the lender of last resort, then banks take on more risk than they should.
Yeah.
So there's an excellent book from the 18th century, 1800s, called Lombard Street. There's nothing new under the sun. Everything has been tried, discovered, and it's the same thing, If you extend credit without corresponding savings, if you mismatch investment horizon with the deposit horizon, there's going to be a problem.
Yeah, it's fundamentally fraudulent, right? Fractional reserve banking, by definition, it's an insolvent business practice.
I agree.
More liabilities outstanding than they have assets to justify.
I agree.
Yet the whole world runs on it.
But you know why? Because banking is a concession, a license from the government.
Yeah.
So who is the most benefited? The government gets the most benefit out of banking.
Yeah.
And they allow the bankers to keep a little cut,
Yeah.
just to keep things moving.
Yeah.
But the number one beneficiary of of banking is the government.
Yes.
So that's why they issue licenses.
Yeah, I've heard the definition of a license is when the government takes a right away from you and then sells it back to you, something like that. Okay, I've probably kept you almost long enough, but one last question, if you don't mind. This corruption of money game runs really deep. And you almost inevitably end up in this perspective of it being like a spiritual war of some kind. Like humans can't resist money printing, so like the human heart can't resist it. And therefore we keep ending up in corrupt money regimes over and over and over again. It does seem like Bitcoin is incorruptible money, so maybe this is the innovation we needed to get out of our own way, so to speak. Do you think that's hyperbolic to say that this is a spiritual struggle to try and get the corruption out of money once and for all?
I'm not sure, but I mean, definitely fiat is a fraud, and a fraud is corrupt by definition.
Yeah.
So yes. However, in the popular mind, when they see ultra successful people in the financial world, they say, well, these guys have to be corrupt because there's no way to make so much money.
Right.
People say, well, I work hard every day, I show up, and I got very little to show for that. Whereas in the financial world, a couple of clicks and a trade, and you make 150 million or make $1 billion, like that. So it's easy to point the finger and say those people are corrupt. And that's where I think there's got to be a difference, because financial markets are markets at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Now, if you abuse them with insider information like some people in Congress, well, that's another thing. And there's laws to attend to that. It should be enforced.
Yeah.
But trading in the markets is a high-risk game and also a high-return game.
Yeah.
So there's some people who know how to play that, and they do really well. And I would not say that they're corrupt. It's just the way it is. Yeah. Now, I also appreciate for somebody who works in an office and makes, $20 an hour, it's going to be hard to accept that these people can make that kind of money.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I would not say that everything is corrupt. However, coming back to the Bitcoin thing, Bitcoin is as pure money as it can get, right? We all know the rules of the game. Here's the blockchain. Here's the coins. I can send them to you. You can send them to her, and she can send them back to me. And if you're thrifty and you don't spend them, you're going to do well without doing a lot of esoteric finance, So that's why I say for most people, my solution is you have a house. If you think that's your investment, sell the house and buy Bitcoin and rent, or keep the house, take a mortgage, buy Bitcoin, and then use the Bitcoin to cover your spending needs as they show up,
Yeah.
Because, people need to live, right?
Of course.
There's many different kinds of investment objectives and thresholds. I mean, for most people, saving is in the form of a house. And it's not a bad saving, okay? It's not bad because the asset doesn't go down. It's just that asset, compared to Bitcoin, doesn't stand a chance, right?
Go down. Yeah. Right.
Because you can always make more houses.
Yes.
Bitcoin, you can't make any more.
That's right.
And you can't take the house with you if something happens. And, you get the property tax and you get the maintenance and Saylor has done an excellent job of pointing out the weaknesses of real estate investment versus Bitcoin. But of course, also people need to have a house where to live. And, that's different. It's not it's a good investment. You use a house for living. Now, if you want it as an investment, it's different.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a great point. Great advice. I think one of the most shocking things for people is when they see house prices over the past 10 years priced in Bitcoin. You realize house prices are actually down 99%.
How about that, huh?
Bitcoin, yeah.
What's the median price now of our home? 300?
I think it's 4 Bitcoin or something.
Four?
Yeah.
$400,000 for, yeah?
Yeah, something like that in the U.S., 400,000 or 500,000.
Be careful with that house.
Yeah. So again, it's your frame of reference, right? It's what you're choosing to price your assets in.
Yeah.
That's determining if prices are going up or prices are going down.
So that's why I say for the vast majority of the people, owning a house is a good investment as long as they live in it. It could be a better investment if they paid for it.
Yeah.
And it's free and clean. Take a mortgage, long-term, fixed rate, and buy Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Just sit on it.
Yeah.
And use the Bitcoin to pay the interest cost.
Yeah.
It's a good deal.
It's good advice.
Long Bitcoin, short fiat, fixed rate. As good as it gets.
Can't lose well. Ricardo, thank you so much
All right.
for having me. And it's been great talking.
Good. We're looking forward to seeing you tomorrow.
I am as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, click here to find more just like it, and here to find our most recent episode. Also, make sure to like this video to help shine light on the corruption of money, and be sure to subscribe to this channel to stay connected.